I think you're all aware, by the end of 2025, we know that tech prices are going to skyrocket. It's the fault of artificial intelligence. It's going to steal all our RAM, all our graphics cards to become even more powerful. So the price of RAM is getting completely crazy. Soon GPUs and SSDs will follow, and we're going to pay 3 times more for our PCs. Well, some of you are panicking and buying in a rush right now, but for most of us, we won't have a choice. We're going to have to keep our PCs, our smartphones, our tablets much longer than usual, waiting for prices to eventually go back to normal someday. Because, well, if you have to choose between paying your rent and buying a powerful PC, the answer is pretty obvious. I buy a powerful PC and move back in with my mom. No, seriously, whether we like it or not, we're at the dawn of a real change. The technology we use today, well, we're going to have to keep it for longer. And so this very hipster matcha idea of sustainable tech, well, it's no longer going to be just a rhetorical question for eco-friendly sandal wearers, Pierre Kenstock, of course, but a real everyday issue. But we who are tech enthusiasts, we know that tech and sustainability don't really go well together. Except for collectors, nobody wants to have a 15-year-old PC or to have to use a smartphone from 2015. Actually, for us, it's pretty normal to want more power, more battery, better photos, to be able to run bigger games. So the problem might not necessarily be obsolescence itself, but rather the programmed aspect of this obsolescence. Who decides when we have to replace our devices? Is it us, the consumers, or is it them? And who exactly are they? But before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Infomaniac, who always supports us in these videos, which are a bit more challenging than the others. I'll tell you more about it later. I'd like to introduce you to their in-house artificial intelligence, which is really unlike any other. As I was saying, we tech enthusiasts know that technology isn't something that ages very well. It's not like an old piece of furniture or an old leather jacket or an old watch, things where we appreciate how they age and get better over time. But a smartphone, a PC, a console, when they get old, they're just slower. The battery doesn't last anymore. We can't even open some apps anymore, and the latest games, well, they don't run. Newness is still the driving force of technology. The new is always better than the old. Progress in technology means doing things better, faster, and more easily. For example, when we make processors, the new processor, well, it really needs to be more powerful than the old one. Otherwise, no one will buy it. If we had to use an image, we could say that technology is a bit like an ogre that devours previous generations. Each generation is meant to correct the flaws of the previous one. As a result, we have a technology that is easier to produce, theoretically cheaper to produce. In any case, it's accessible to more people. So technological evolution is destructive. That's basically obsolescence. If we had to keep, for example, backward compatibility for tech devices, if we had to ensure their repairability over generations and generations, all of that would slow down development cycles a lot. Imagine what your devices would look like today if, for example, TVs still had to be compatible with SCART sockets from the 1990s. Imagine the size and weight of your smartphone if every part could be unscrewed with a simple Phillips screwdriver. So actually, in technology, obsolescence isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just the nature of technology. It's normal for our devices to have life cycles. The problem is the length of these cycles. Are we the ones who decide the renewal cycles of our devices, or is this planned obsolescence? Right now, we can see that these cycles are speeding up more and more, moving much faster than our needs, and it's getting harder and harder for us to keep up. Actually, you've probably already had this feeling when you buy a computer, a smartphone, or another technological device. You've already heard that little voice in your head telling you, well, now that I've bought it, this thing is already becoming outdated. You've already had that unpleasant feeling when you see the new games coming out and you say, my PC won't be able to run them. The moment when you say, my next vacation isn't going to be great, I won't be able to film it in 8K, well, that's planned obsolescence. They've replaced your needs with desires that fit the vendors and tech manufacturers' sales calendar. And that's exactly what happened to fashion, to the fashion industry with fast fashion. It's happening to us in tech with fast tech, and we don't want this fast tech. Well, we're fed up with fast tech. We've had enough of fast tech. We're really sick of it. Actually, this race for the latest tech, this arms race, it's discouraging and above all, it's ruining us. And actually, the problem is that it doesn't just cost us the price of accessibility, the price of buying a tech item, it costs us on so many different levels. So obviously, the first level is you. When you buy a tech product with the renewal cycles getting faster and faster, marketing puts a lot of pressure on you. We start thinking, oh wow, I need to upgrade my smartphone. It's already 2 years old, oh my god. And all of this, well, it drains your wallet. The average spending for French households is 416 euros on tech products. I should clarify, I'm talking per year, not per month. But I think the most discouraging thing is that we get less and less pleasure from having a new tech gadget. Very quickly, it gives way to a kind of disgust, a sort of nausea from overconsumption. And as a result, we end up with drawers full of tech stuff. Don't lie, I know some of you have that drawer. A drawer where we somewhat shamefully hide all those tech gadgets we've never really used, that we bought impulsively because marketing told us to. We don't dare throw them away because we feel a bit guilty. And then one day we get fed up and throw everything in the drawer away. We don't recycle, of course. Usually we've waited too long. It's not even sellable on Vinted anymore. So just a quick aside, the tech drawer has gotten a little better over the past few years. We tend to accumulate a bit less, so that's a good sign. But actually earlier I was talking about fast fashion or ultra-fast fashion, and we're starting to have the same problem in tech. To make tech more accessible to more people, manufacturers thought, let's produce cheaper tech products that are much less durable, and people will replace them much more often. And actually the problem is that with this fast tech, we end up paying for it twice. First when we buy it, but then we pay for it again with public money, meaning our taxes. Because this fast tech, this disposable tech, generates a huge amount of waste. It has to be collected, sorted, and decontaminated. And for that, you need infrastructure, inspections, and a whole logistics system that is extremely expensive. And this e-waste pollution, I'm not telling you anything new, it's exploding right now. Since 2010, it has increased by 83%. And it should increase by more than 30% by 2030. And I'm not necessarily talking about the environment. Here, I'm talking about the real cost, everything this is going to cost us. And a cost we don't necessarily think about is the geopolitical and social cost of this fast tech. If you're watching this video in 2026, early 2026, you know that this is kind of the issue of the moment. We realize that we're extremely dependent on producing countries, for example, those that produce rare earths or simply tech-producing countries, which is becoming more and more problematic. Production is concentrated in certain regions to lower costs. Well, we use cheap labor, which leads to deplorable working conditions in some workshops around the world, and in some industrialized countries like ours, well, we've completely lost our companies and our know-how in the field of technology. I'm talking about consumer technology.
In the past, we had French computers, sir, and then we had the Minitel.
And then, of course, the elephant in the room, well, it's that famous ecological cost. And here again, I'm talking about the economic and ecological cost. We're doing all this while happily polluting away. It's going to cost a fortune for future generations. Today, e-waste pollution costs $37 billion a year. It's expected to cost up to $40 billion a year by 2030. And here I'm only talking about the pollution itself. That doesn't even include the public health problems, the climate issues it can cause, and as a result, it will create other economic problems. All that stuff, you know. So we're going to take a little break from this anti-capitalist rant. I can tell you're fired up, but let's tone it down a bit to talk about our sponsor. Isn't that a bit ironic? No, actually, I'm going to tell you something concrete. How can you use artificial intelligence without sending your data halfway across the planet or burning up the planet? Well, our sponsor, Infomaniac, with its AI assistant Yuria, might have the solution. Yuria is Infomaniac's artificial intelligence assistant. You know, Infomaniac, they're Swiss. They are independent from the web giants, and Yuria, this AI, is entirely designed and hosted in Switzerland. And the really interesting thing about Yuria is that when we talk about AI, there are usually two sticking points. First, the issue of data and privacy. Yuria really puts the emphasis on confidentiality. There's even an ephemeral mode where the data isn't kept at all. So if you want to summarize a sensitive document, work on a professional email, handle sensitive company data, or even ask a somewhat personal question. Actually, with Yuria, you'll reduce the risk of sharing data without really knowing where it's going, what it's going to be used for, and especially by whom. And then There's the energy aspect, which is often controversial. What you need to know is that the data centers used for Urea at Infomaniac are already powered 100% by renewable energy. But most importantly, the heat generated is recovered and used to warm an entire neighborhood in Geneva. Yes, literally your prompts can end up as district heating. It won't just be evaporated water. So in practical terms, and this is excellent news, Urea is free. You can use it in your browser or even directly through the mobile app, and you'll be able to do the everyday things you're used to doing with generative AI tools. Ask questions, summarize documents, do audio transcription, and so on. I'll put the link to Urea in the description of this video. We'd still like to personally thank Infomaniac once again for supporting us with these videos, which are in a format that's probably going to get a bit fewer views. For us, these are important videos to make, and for Infomaniac as well. That's where we really share values with them. So I'll say it, my voice a little shaky, Infomaniac. You're much more than just sponsors to us, and now let's get back to the video. How do we escape the trap of fast tech? Do we have to go live in a cave, or are there other solutions? Well, if the cave is heated by Urea, just know that there are solutions to get out of fast tech. And let me reassure you right away, I'm not going to give you some greenwashing talk or anything guilt-tripping like buy less, it's your fault. You're the bad guys for upgrading your smartphone. No, because actually, let's start with some good news. We're already starting to slow down this fast tech. Replacement cycles and the lifespans of smartphones and PCs are getting longer, and the best example is smartphones. More and more of us are realizing that in the end, the changes from year to year aren't that significant. Back in 2020, over 31% of you were still changing your smartphones every year. And now in 2024, well, it's down to 21%. So that's an improvement. And by the way, I find it pretty impressive to see that now more than 10% of us are changing our smartphones only every 5 years. More and more of you are buying at your own pace, deciding to sort out your wants from your needs, with those wants often coming from marketing. You're getting better at resisting marketing, and that's good news. And the other good news is that at the level of markets, states, and countries, there is also a reaction starting against planned obsolescence and fast tech. We're starting to have laws that regulate the excesses of companies. We're starting to see the effects that help break this destructive spiral of overconsumption. Several states, several countries, and not just in Europe, now require, for example, manufacturers to make spare parts available for 7 years. And even if everything isn't completely perfect yet, we're hearing more and more about and seeing more and more of repairability scores and efficiency scores. And that's a positive thing, because in the current tech conversation, we're moving away from that absolutist view that only focuses on price and power. Durability and efficiency are becoming real selling points. It's still mostly for hipsters and matcha fans, but it's beginning to catch on and matter. One thing I can tell you, as someone who often goes to new smartphone launch events, not even 5 years ago, not a single journalist or tech content creator would ask how long you were going to provide updates for this or that smartphone. Is it repairable? What is its repairability score? Those were not questions we used to ask at all, so it's definitely a sign of the times. But of course, to address that, we'll have to go further. I'm a bit of an extremist, but I'd like us to require tech manufacturers to make their products open source if they decide to abandon them. If Apple decides that a certain iPhone becomes obsolete, that they will no longer provide after-sales service or spare parts for it, well, they should be required to release the schematics as open source so that makers, people with 3D printers, can extend the product's life. And it's the same for software, for operating systems. All of that should become open source. I know some people will say, well, wait, these are technologies that belong to Apple. They need to protect them. If they want to protect them, they must keep supporting them. If they abandon them, they're ours. And why would that be important? Because it would allow for the real emergence of a market for tech repairers, for artisan repairers, kind of like the cobblers of tech. It already exists, but once again, it's extremely niche for now, and they often have a hard time getting spare parts. Well, I might be a bit extreme, but I'm still well aware of that. We have to be careful. Legislation has its limits. That's something we know well in Europe. Legislation can also be counterproductive, so we need to think carefully before making things mandatory. And for me, I think that won't be enough. We're also going to need a deeper change, a cultural change, beyond making sustainability mandatory. mandatory. We have to make people want sustainability. And if there's a country we should look to for inspiration when it comes to valuing sustainability, well, it's Japan. Now, let me say right away, I'm not a promoter of Japan. Japan has plenty of flaws, but for those who have already seen videos about Japan or who have had the chance to go there, there's something very interesting over there. They have both a very high-tech side and at the same time a very slow-tech side. You've probably heard that not so long ago in Japan they were still using floppy disks and fax machines. You can make fun of it, but it comes from two things that are quite important in Japanese culture. You shouldn't generalize, but still. First, in Japan there's a bit of an engineering culture. Why change something that works? You can make fun of an old floppy disk, but if it gets the job done, why change it? Actually, it's simply about thinking that efficiency has more value and merit than novelty. Sometimes in the West, we make changes that end up working worse than before. There's a period of adaptation, you lose your bearings for a while, but there's also something deeper in Japanese culture. It's wabi-sabi. It's a form of philosophy that values simplicity, imperfection, and the beauty of things that age. You've actually seen this before, like with kintsugi. It's the art of repairing porcelain with gold. Or maybe you've seen sashiko embroidery, which is a technique for repairing clothes, but also embellishing the garment. Actually, there's something really interesting about this. The imperfect object, the object that has aged, the object that has been repaired, is more valuable than a new one. And that's something we've completely lost in the West. Consumer and ultra-consumer societies have completely flipped our sense of direction. Repairing and durability are often seen as something a bit contemptible. Historically, only poor people repaired things. And by the way, if you ask people around you, or even if you ask yourself, often something we have in mind is, poof, why bother repairing? I can just replace the item, I'll have a new one. And often, repairs aren't worth it, not worth the cost or the effort, and actually sellers and marketing really push us toward that. But the real problem is that in our ultra-consumer societies, products are more accessible, mass-produced, and as a result, products have lost their value. And that's something very important in sustainability. We only repair what has value. First, there's what it costs you. If you paid a lot for something, you repair it. Then there's sentimental value, something you care about. Well, you try to extend its life to make it last as long as possible, but let's talk about the purchase price first. I'm going to shock some of you, but the problem is that some tech just isn't valuable enough anymore. So of course I'm not talking about Apple. In fact, what happened is that to make technology more accessible to the masses, to go mass market, people all over the world have tried to produce technological devices that are cheaper and cheaper. So cheap labor, cheap components, cheap production methods with cheap finishes, and above all, no after-sales service or repairs. That costs too much. And yet, these lower purchase prices actually end up costing you even more, because since they're not durable at all, not repairable at all, you have to replace them much more often. Actually, the problem is that this fast tech is disposable tech. And why do we call it disposable? Because we don't repair what's cheap. If you buy a t-shirt for €7, you're not going to spend €10 at the tailor to have it repaired. It's easier to just buy a new one, it'll cost you less. If you bought a smartphone worth €300, you're not going to spend €100 to change the battery. It's counterproductive for you. Actually, tech is no longer an investment at all. It's become a consumable, and so we end up in the paradox of this culture of overconsumption. Only the rich can afford durable products now, and those with fewer means have been thrown into this spiral of continuous consumption of disposable products with all those hidden costs we talked about earlier. But I would also like to talk about a value we often forget. It's sentimental value, the attachment to objects, and that's a problem in tech. We have little attachment to our technological devices. Yes, we all have a little smartphone we liked. Maybe we even gave it a little name, or a computer we put stickers on and kept a bit longer. But overall, tech and design are pretty uniform. It's pretty bland. We love what these objects do, not the objects themselves. We don't want to keep them long and are already thinking about the next one. I'm really passionate about this topic and I could make an entire video about it. But Yanis, who's behind the camera, is waving at me like crazy. No, it's already too long. But I'd still like to think a little about how we could make tech devices more endearing. Give your smartphone a kiss every morning. Draw a smile on your smartphone. No, but seriously, I'd like to talk about the Fairphone example, because you've all been thinking about it since the beginning of this video. There's Fairphone, they make sustainable smartphones. And yet, in terms of numbers, Fairphone is ultra niche. Very few people buy Fairphones. You might wonder why, because on paper, the Fairphone offering is pretty cool. A more durable, more repairable smartphone that you keep for longer. So we've already tested some on the channel, and there's something I'd like to say to Fairphone. It's that I think they haven't gone far enough. In fact, when you have a Fairphone in your hand, it's as ordinary as any other Android smartphone. I think Fairphone should really go all in on that unique clip-on aspect and so on. Make customizable phones, maybe even limited editions. Use materials that have more value. We could keep things affordable with plastic finishes, but also allow for titanium finishes. They could work with designers to make smartphones that don't look like any others. That way, we'd be proud to have a Fairphone. We'd want to repair it. We'd want to make it last. If you've paid almost more for the structure of your smartphone than for the components inside, and if you have the ability to change those components, it becomes a bit like an old watch. You want to make it last. You want to let it develop a patina. Alright, I'll wrap up this aside since I have one more point about repair and durability to address. Often we don't repair our tech devices because it's difficult to repair tech devices or to find someone to repair tech devices. In the past, when plastic and electronics didn't exist, we could more or less easily repair things ourselves, change a belt, screw things back together. But since we have electronics, since we have miniaturization, everything has become very complicated to repair, and it's almost impossible to repair things yourself. For an object to be repairable, it first needs to be designed to be repairable. We were talking about cobblers earlier. You can't properly repair shoes that have glued soles, whereas if the sole is stitched, it can be repaired endlessly. Actually, an object is repairable when it has quality construction, good materials, and easy access to the parts. While writing this video, I came across a really interesting community. These are people who are active in the ThinkPad community. You remember, the ThinkPad at first was a computer, a very recognizable IBM laptop with its red button in the middle of the keyboard. And actually, ThinkPad enthusiasts don't just repair old ThinkPads, they update them so they can really be used with today's Windows. This isn't retro tech. Retro tech, it's not about restoring old computers, it's about upscaling computers. And what's interesting about that is why they chose ThinkPads. Actually, ThinkPads were very robust to begin with. The cases of ThinkPads are made of magnesium, titanium, and fiberglass. At least for the first generations of ThinkPads, these computers are relatively easy to open and repair, and the parts are accessible. That's something that makes that whole upcycling process easier. But then we come back to the main obstacle to repair, which is that you just can't be bothered. No, more seriously, it's not that you can't be bothered, but it's not easy to find someone with a good reputation who can repair something. So at Apple, they have good repair service, and you know that. That's one of the reasons for Apple's very high prices, though it's not the only one. I made a video about this if you're interested. Why is Apple so expensive? But I have good news for you. Things are starting to change. As I'm making this video, iFixit just released a new app. You might know iFixit. They make smartphone teardown videos and they give repairability scores to our smartphones and computers. Well, this app is designed a bit like a tech support chat. It's powered by artificial intelligence that has been trained on all the repair guides from iFixit. It's free and it will allow you to repair a lot of electronic devices and even home appliances. iFixit will make money by selling you kits or spare parts. I haven't had time to test this application, but we thought that in 2026 with NowTech, we would try to repair a number of tech devices that we have. We also have our tech drawer with items that are either broken or unused. We'd like to repair them, to resell them, or give them a second life. So not everyone will enjoy repairing tech devices, but having the possibility and the tools that make self-repair easier is good news, because as I was saying, enjoyment is something really important. All these discussions about sustainability, ecology, and buying tech devices less often can sometimes make you feel a bit guilty. It's not very pleasant. We often forget to talk about the enjoyment some people feel when they have devices they've repaired themselves. The pleasure you can get from discovering new features on a technology you've already been using for a while. And that's exactly what I want to talk about, the idea of enjoyment. I think that we as tech content creators have our role to play. I know some of you have thought since the video started, Jerome, it's nice to discuss sustainability, but as a tech channel, that's a bit like the pot calling the kettle black. And you're somewhat right. In a way, we're kind of on the side of marketing and overconsumption. We're always showing you new products, and sometimes, well, we're a bit like influencers. We can influence you. You say to yourself, I didn't think I needed this, but now I really want it, and as a result you end up buying new products because of us. And yet, if you really listen to us and take a step back, for the vast majority of tech channels that exist today on YouTube, we're giving you more and more reasonable advice. Look at all our latest reviews, like our iPhone reviews. We keep telling you this iPhone isn't worth it. If you already have the previous generation, even the one from 3 years ago, you really won't notice any difference. Sometimes we test products that are extremely expensive just to tell you not to buy them. For example, the Vision Pro was all about the technological excitement at first. Everyone agrees that for now it's pretty much a useless purchase. It doesn't really fulfill any need. And I think that's only going to increase in the future because that's kind of our role. In any case, that's how I see my role as a tech channel. We're here to help you cut through the marketing. That fantasy that makes you believe the world is always better with new products, we're here to tell you, yeah, it's not really going to be that useful to you. If you've been following NowTech for a long time, you know it's something that's close to our hearts. For quite a few years, we've been advocating for take your time. Take your time with tech. In fact, in 2026, we plan to change the logo to really show you that for us, take your time means that sustainability is what matters, not just ecology. Ecology is part of sustainability. But for us, sustainability is much broader, especially when it comes to the idea of enjoyment, the pleasure of discovering new things we can do with the technology we already have. It's in this spirit that we made videos about certain software like Note or Freeform, which allow you to rediscover your tablet. We also often tell you to take your time when choosing to make the right purchases, to really listen to your desires, but more importantly, to follow your needs. In short, count on us. Count on us when it comes to sustainability. In any case, count on us to keep promoting that. Personally, of course, when it comes to tech, I can't really apply the rules because the channel buys products or gets products on loan. All my tech needs are met. I don't buy tech myself, but when it comes to durability rules, for example, I decided to apply that to my clothes for the past 2 years. I'm learning to repair my clothes. I'm learning to choose them, so I can't completely put myself in your shoes, but I'm trying. The road is long, and so is this video. I know that a lot of you stopped between 6 and 7 minutes. Yeah, we have the stats. We know when you leave us. Damn, I won't stop no matter what. To give you proof that we don't just make videos telling you to buy stuff. If you missed it, don't forget our video that we make every year. Don't buy the iPhone 17. We made the same video for the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 15. This year, I really explained why I make this kind of video. Don't buy it. We also have videos where we test old smartphones. More than a year ago, we tested an iPhone 10 to see if we could still use it today. You can rely on us to occasionally make videos like these, which differ from our usual product presentations. And in any case, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you an excellent year, and may it be a sustainable one. We'll see you again very, very soon in the next video.